They say pressure makes perfection.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
That with enough grit, determination, and persistence, you can reach any goal.
I'm part of Schaefer's top jazz orchestra. It's the best in the country.
But what happens when the path you take leads to more trauma than fulfillment?
It's not exactly my idea of success.
I'd rather die drunk, broke at 34 and have people at a dinner table talk about me than live to be rich and sober at 90 and nobody remember who I was.
When those meant to guide you on your pathway to success
I didn't know they allowed into Schaefer. Am I to understand that you cannot read tempo?
seem to prioritize their ambitions over your own peace of mind.
You Fletcher, you!
That's the crux of Damien Chazelle's Whiplash, which, true to its name, is a roller coaster of emotional turmoil.
I'm upset. Louder! I'm upset!
Chazelle was only 28 when he scraped together what money he could to create the short film that would eventually go on to become the Academy Award-winning Whiplash.
This person comes in your life and you want their approval more than anything else, but you also hate them. So I think it started with just the idea of that relationship and what that does to you as a young person. I just sort of kept it personal. I kept it to what that world was.
I mean, for a film that grossed nearly $50 million at the box office, the original short was made on a laughably low budget.
We're having a meeting to spend a 3-day weekend making a short film for which everybody's going to get paid $173.
But he didn't have a choice. After being rejected his intended funding of $3 million, Chazelle ventured to create a proof of concept.
In the movie, it's the first kind of big studio band rehearsal scene. And, it seemed like kind of a representative sample of the movie.
Something to silence the critics who, understandably, were a bit skeptical.
I didn't have a lot of directing experience, so it was a hard sell. The short was basically really intended as just a way to kind of convince financiers.
I mean, he was in the latter half of his 20s, and what everyone perceived as just a kid would end up being one of the greatest filmmakers of the 2010s. But for now, he was relatively unknown.
Jason Reitman sent me the script for the short and the feature film of this thing called Whiplash by this kid nobody had ever heard of.
And with only one prior feature under his belt, which he had made while he was still in school. So to validate just how serious he was, he needed some bigger names.
First of all, I read this script. It is up there with the most brilliant things I've ever read.
However, the person that his producer had pitched for the supporting lead was not at all who he had in mind.
I pictured the character as a bigger kind of New Jersey Italian American. So then suddenly I hear JK Simmons, who's definitely not that. At first it was cognitive dissonance. It's like, well, that's wrong. That's not the character.
And funny enough, it seemed like the skepticism was mutual.
I'm looking for some big, tall, impressive black guy with a, beret. That's my impression of who Damien Chazelle must be, having written this, And then this skinny little kid from Jersey, raises his hand and go, JK? And I go, oh.
But what would result from this unexpected duo would be the creation of one of the greatest villains in all of film.
Let's have fun.
If you deliberately sabotage my band, I will you like a pig.
Do you think you're out of tune?
Yes.
Then why the didn't you say so?
Now, music is subjective, and so are things like style and scent. They're a super core part of almost any appearance. I've been on a big self-care binge lately, so I've been super into fragrances. When the opportunity arose, I jumped at the chance to try Scentbird by sponsoring today's video. Scentbird gives you access to such a wide variety of fragrances that are either inaccessible to the average person or simply out of their price range. That is, until now. What I also didn't realize though is just how massive their selection would be. We're talking hundreds of options and some of the most luxurious scents on the entire market. A lot of these fragrances retail for hundreds of dollars, but with Scentbird's monthly subscription, you can try a number of different options, all at a really affordable price. When I received mine, I was pretty impressed with just how large the vials were. This is a lot of fragrance at a super affordable price. European scents are my personal favorites, so I went went with the Italian fragrance Tonstrina 17 by Bisterzi and Mancera from Cedra Boisé in Paris. It's not just Europe. We're talking luxury scents from all over the world. They also come in these cool protective packages that are portable with any bag. Whether you're at the gym or out with friends, it's super convenient to bring along. Each fragrance came with these descriptive cards that show both the ingredients and a brief description of the scent itself. However, if you want to do a more thorough approach, the website has a number of customer reviews for each product so you can easily find which one better suits your needs. I feel really fortunate to be working with Scentbird, and I absolutely love what they sent me. And if you're interested in trying it for yourself, you can use my promo code RENZI to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird, or scan the QR code on screen. That's just $8 for your first month and $16.95 for a continued subscription. I'll leave more information in the description below, but once again, that's promo code RENZI, or just use the QR code on screen. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. Whiplash follows the story of Andrew Neiman, an ambitious young drummer who gets accepted into the prestigious Schaefer Conservatory, his absolute dream school.
I found out I'm the youngest person in the entire band.
But there's just one problem. His class is taught by infamous conductor Terence Fletcher, a man who spares no attempt at getting the perfect sound.
Are you one of those single-tier people? Do I look like a double rainbow to you?
Even at the expense of his students' peace of mind.
I can cut you any time I want.
While Andrew's journey takes center stage, it's Fletcher who ends up driving most of the film's conflict.
We did joke that like this movie we wanted it to feel like Fletcher had cut it.
He doesn't even really need to try. His stern temperament speaks for itself. Simmons makes use of the entire room, often pacing back and forth to address the entire class as opposed to an individual.
My ears are fine. We definitely have an out-of-tune player. Whoever it is, this is your last chance.
He knows that if any of the students, even if they haven't slipped up, get the impression that they're doing well, they might be inclined to phone in the next performance. Just good enough isn't something that's in Fletcher's vocabulary.
Not quite my tempo.
So he keeps everyone, no matter their progress or consistency, constantly on their toes.
Carried your fat ass for too long, Mets. I'm not gonna have you cost us a competition because your mind's on a Happy Meal instead of on pitch. For the record, Mets wasn't out of tune. You were, Erickson, but he didn't know. And that's bad enough.
But this isn't typical with people he doesn't see potential in. When Fletcher goes to scout new musicians, he doesn't lash out or scold them as dramatically as he normally would.
3, 4. Okay, all right.
Most of them aren't worth the effort to mold, and lashing out isn't worth the trouble. To him, they're a lost cause. Andrew is initially only exposed to the calmer side of Fletcher.
Drums with me. Thank you, Joe. No, other drums.
The film opens with Andrew playing long after school hours. Fletcher notices this and sees that while he has the potential, he needs a bit more guidance.
So you know I'm looking for players.
Yes, sir.
Then why did you stop playing?
Unfortunately for Andrew, Fletcher can see clear as day that he's malleable enough to influence.
Did I ask you to start playing again?
Sorry,
I asked why you stopped playing, and your version of an answer was to turn into a wind-up monkey.
He's what's called a passive protagonist, for now at least. Most of the story, from the initial opening scene to the final climactic performance, is led by Fletcher. He scouts Andrew, tells him to show up to class, and leads him to spiral in pursuit of his instructor's approval.
Is that really the fastest you can play, you worthless Jaime?
Now there's two things that Fletcher wants out of his students. Talent is certainly one of them, but also obedience and tolerance.
I will drum your ass back to Nassau where you can turn pages until you graduate or drop out.
He needs someone capable of coping with the constant ridicule and stress. In his mind, pressure makes diamonds, and there's no alternative that'll get the same result.
You know, maybe you go too far and you discourage the next Charlie Parker from ever becoming Charlie Parker.
No, man, no. Because the next Charlie Parker would never be discouraged.
While his class is taught behind closed doors, we see this more publicly in a lot of other art forms as well, like the dynamics between a head chef and their employees. Marco Pierre White had similar ideas to that of Terence Fletcher.
He pushed you to the extreme.
How did he do that?
because, he drummed it in. If you're going to do it to your best. And if you don't want to do it to your best, get the out of here.
Think of Gordon Ramsay as Andrew.
You're becoming a beast because of the monster he created.
Sure, Gordon went on to become one of, if not the most famous chef of all time, overseeing a number of Michelin star restaurants, but it came at the expense of both his peace of mind and his relationship with his instructor.
It's a great shame. I mean, the man was the first ever Brit to win 3 Michelin stars, an absolute legend at his time, but, I suppose when you get to the late 40s, early 50s, it's time to hang up the apron strings.
He would even go on to perpetuate this vicious cycle.
This is a dream. This is a piss take. Get with it.
I see those environments all the time, and I say to the individuals, stay in that environment. Learn to dance in the storm.
This is just one case, though. There's no telling how many chefs whose aspirations were destroyed during one man's pursuit of artistic perfection. How many musicians were turned away from the craft by Fletcher's means of teaching. But it's not just the vulgarity that picks away at you. It's the unpredictability.
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
Fletcher knows that in order for his students to reach their goals, they have to go through him.
By the time you're done at Schaefer, you're gonna make Daddy look like a success story.
He leverages this power dynamic to cross the boundaries between what's ethical and what's not.
We will stay here for as long as it takes until one of you can play in time.
Whether he's throwing things, hurling insults, or simply invading their personal space. He's an individual who avoids any and all compliments.
There are no 2 words in the English language more harmful than good job.
So when he singles you out, you're deathly afraid of the conflict ahead.
Tell me it's not you, Elmer Fudd.
What's interesting is when he's not teaching, there's a somber, almost father-like tone.
You're here for a reason. You believe that, right?
Yeah,
Say it.
I'm here for a reason.
Stockholm Syndrome is defined as a coping mechanism to a captive or abusive situation. This is more commonly applied to criminals and their captives, but it's also prevalent in art, be it a coach and their athlete, a chef and their employee, or a music teacher and their student.
That is a double-time swing. That's what got you in here, right?
Oh yeah.
Fletcher provides the students with just enough consideration outside of class to show he's capable of empathy.
The key is to just relax. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry about what the other guys are thinking.
These little sparks of humanity are few and far between, leading to his students, and mainly Andrew, to further crave his approval.
I can't. I can.
You know Whiplash by heart.
Yes, sir. Every measure.
So much so that they're willing to nearly destroy themselves in the process.
I found out this morning that Sean died yesterday.
Fletcher never acknowledges this poor behavior. He'll hint at it, but with some interesting language.
I get it. I know I made enemies.
Fletcher always puts those who disagree with his methods in a place of opposition, framing them as enemies instead of critics, even though he's never found his Charlie Parker.
The truth is, Andrew, I never really had a Charlie Parker.
The blame is placed on everyone else's lack of raw talent or discipline.
But I tried. I actually tried. Any moron can wave his arms and keep people in tempo. I was there to push people beyond what's expected of them.
Which brings us to arguably the most interesting part of the movie.
I know it was you.
Andrew is pushed to give the performance another go, not out of a willingness to please Fletcher,
Yeah, I guess maybe you don't have it.
but out of raw hatred. He no longer fears the man who had essentially ruined both his life and his dreams of becoming a drummer. No longer shackled by anxiety, he's able to completely let go, and deliver a performance finally worthy of his mentor's approval. Andrew has reached the success he's so desperately craved, but it's not exactly a happy ending. The audience perceives it that way, but it was never Chazelle's intent.
That the ending is sort of seems triumphant in its outer contours, and yet it's kind of a guy returning to an abusive relationship. It's a guy willing to be, there's a brainwashing element to the movie, that there's a kind of cult element to it, that he's sort of giving himself in to this larger than life figure who's completely dominating his life.
The problem with Andrew being embarrassed into delivering the performance of a lifetime is that it completely validated Fletcher's methods.
Neiman, you weren't a part.
All of the trauma that was imposed, all of the blood, sweat, and tears shed in pursuit of seeking approval was seemingly justified in these final moments. It's more a horror story than one of success, and Fletcher, the monster and main antagonist, is almost giddy at the sight of his next Charlie Parker. Andrew notices this, and in the closing seconds, he dismisses Fletcher's checkered past and they share a moment of mutual respect. It really seems like, as the viewer, we're far more fascinated by the methods of Fletcher than we are the story of Andrew.
I understood who this guy was, what he wanted, what he needed. Jazz, music, art, nothing else mattered.
JK Simmons absolutely commands the screen.
I'm a classically trained musician. I wanted to be Leonard Bernstein. I'm a conductor.
And thankfully, it wasn't just the audience that saw it as well.
JK Simmons, Whiplash.
Whiplash is, in my opinion, one of the most thrilling and influential films of the last 20 years. Terence Fletcher is one of the most chilling and intimidating characters ever brought to the big screen. A villainous and self-righteous egomaniac, one portrayed by an actor who never seems to squander an audience's attention, but rather commands it.
1 and 2 and...
Not my tempo!
I'd like to thank Scentbird once again for sponsoring today's video. Remember to use code RENZI for 55% off your first month, or use the QR code on screen. Thank you again for watching.